After the release of their most recent album, Clancy, 21 Pilots embarked on the Clancy World Tour, starting in America and then traveling international. And this is a tour which became well known for its incredible transitions, the great effects, the pyrotechnics, and all of that. It also became more prominent online towards the end of the tour when lore-related elements started being incorporated. For instance, the fact that in the final show, the torchbearer approaches Clancy, tries to hand a jacket to him, and Clancy completely ignores him. It goes off into the next song without the torchbearer, which broke the pattern that they had in place for the entirety of the world tour up until that point. But among all these various aspects and elements of the show, the transitions, the performances, the graphics, the effects, and so on, there was one aspect of the show which stood out to me in particular, and which I found to be quite interesting, and for some reason very few people are actually talking about it. Now I understand why people might have been hesitant to do a deep dive into this element of the show while the tour was actually happening, because certainly people were reluctant to spoil different aspects of the show, and that's fair enough. But now that the tour is over, and presumably the next leg of the tour, the Breach leg that's coming in the fall, is going to vary from what we have seen before, I think it's fair to actually take a closer look at some of these elements, even at risk of spoiling them for people who weren't able to attend while the tour was actually going on. Now, the part of the show that I'm referencing here and want to take a closer look at in this video is the car radio stunt. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a pretty simple aspect of the show. Now, in previous years, really ever since they started playing car radio live, they've always had a certain stunt performance aspect to this song. Oftentimes, Tyler would just simply climb up the railings and scaffolding of the venue that they're in, and then later when they were playing more arenas, they would set up a kind of stand or platform closer to the B stage of the pit that he would climb up and stand on there. And after reaching that point, that height, he would take off his mask and show his face. But what they did for the Clancy Tour was a new spin on this aspect. And I think that's part of the reason why it went unnoticed for so many people, was just, it's a new spin on something that's already been occurring. But what they did with this new spin was fascinating, because they took Tyler, as he's playing on the piano, have him go to the middle of the stage, and he falls through a trap door. And then moments later, the spotlight turns and reveals that he's there, standing at one of the highest seating points available. Spotlight shines on him, he takes off his mask and reveals it is in fact him, which of course belies the fact that whoever was playing the piano down on the main stage wasn't actually Tyler. He had a mask on, so it would be pretty easy to just put someone else in there and have him like lip syncing the vocals for car radio on a backing track, as Tyler himself runs from whatever the end of the last song was right before car radio, runs off stage and goes up to the balcony. So it's pretty simple to understand how they carried out such a stunt. It's pretty cool to see when you're in the venue and the show is going on live. But what else is there to it? It's just a cool stunt, right? Well, maybe not. I had the chance to go see the band live during the Clancy World Tour, and I saw this stunt performed live. And the first thing that came to mind when they did this was a particular movie and book. And if you know the movie and book, you probably know what I'm talking about already. That is the film and the book, The Prestige. Now, the book, The Prestige, was written by Christopher Priest, and the film was directed by Christopher Nolan, who's a pretty famous director, most recently known for his film Oppenheimer. If you've seen this film, you probably understand the connection. If you haven't, I am going to go into spoilers for both the book and the film. So if you would not like to see or hear spoilers of this nature, then now's your chance to go watch something else in the meantime, namely go watch The Prestige and then come back and finish this video. It is a great movie, definitely well worth watching. Now, the concept that I'm going to explore here that ties in and relates to what we see in the Clancy World Tour is something that is contained in both the book and the movie, so I'm going to treat them as one entity. Although there are differences between the two, this aspect remains the same, and it centers around this one trick, which is kind of the prestige, the highlight, the main point of the end of the story here. And in this trick, the magician Angier performs something that's basically exactly the same as what they did in the Clancy Tour. He falls through the trapdoor and appears an instant later the highest realm of the balcony. The spotlight shines on him, and it shows it's him. Exactly the same person. Now, because this is kind of a science fiction magic film, in the story, it actually transports him, essentially. There are some more specific technicalities to it where he's being duplicated through electricity. It isn't actually transporting him so much as copying him and reproducing him the other spot. But for the purposes of simplicity, he is being transported up there. And it is exactly the same person. And so you can see him for who he is on the stage and then for who he is in the balcony. Obviously, for the Clancy Tour, they weren't actually transporting Tyler up there, so they had to mask him down here and then reveal who he was up there. But the trick is strikingly similar. And I think it's interesting that Tyler, whether knowingly or unknowingly, referenced this story, The Prestige. Because as soon as I noticed that parallel between this trick in the Clancy show and the trick in The Prestige, I began to think of other parallels. Obviously, the first one that comes to mind is the fact that we have the song Trapdoor, and in that we have the lines, "Everyone gather around for a show, watch as this man disappears as we know." And they perfectly play out the lyrics of that song in the Clancy Tour. He disappears through a trapdoor and then reappears, and it turns out he's different to who we thought he was, because on the stage we thought that was Tyler. Then as soon as we see Tyler up there, we know, oh, that couldn't have been Tyler on the stage. But the entire plot of The Prestige also focuses around this idea of doubles and people not quite being who they seem, but on first glance, they are who they seem. You just have to dig deeper. You have to watch closely to uncover the truth of what is actually going on here. And then it turns out there are two versions of the same person at play. And this is something that I have proposed in various theories over the months, over the past year, ever since Clancy came out, time and again. What if we have two Clancys at play in the story? What if that trick in that moment in the Clancy Tour was pointing us towards the fact that there are two Clancys at play in the story, just like there are in The Prestige? I've done other videos talking about how there are parallels and references between the Demas story and the story of Lord of the Rings. And once again, I'm not trying to imply that Tyler is directly stealing or copying ideas from other sources, but it's clear he is drawing on a number of different influences. And while those references impact and influence the imagery and elements of the story that he employs when writing it, I think they can also be reverse engineered to help us uncover more about what is going on in this story. Parts of the story that we haven't quite solved, questions we still have unanswered, which I very much doubt will be fully answered in City Walls. Time and time again throughout the music videos for the story, the lore-based music videos, we have intentionally been shown two Clancys at play. Think of Jumpsuit, where we see the character in Trench getting captured and brought back by Nico, juxtaposed with another version of Clancy who is still left at the burnt-out shell of the car from Heavy Dirty Soul. Then again, we have Paladin Strait. One version of Clancy is attacking the tower, coming face to face with Nico, while another stands on the cliffs overlooking the Paladin Strait, urging him on, but not there nonetheless. And we almost see this in Navigating as well, though it's a bit harder to explicitly say that there are two versions, but we see one playing the guitar or the bass, and we see another traveling through the wilderness of Trench to join Torchbearer in the Bandito camp. The whole story of The Prestige is one of doubles, and in the Clancy Tour we are given a direct reference to a story which is full of doubles. And what other imagery, what other clue has been showing up time and time again throughout this entire story, the entire Demon narrative? A clue which many people thought was hinting us towards the fact that there was going to be a second album after Clancy, that it was going to be a double album to end the story. But a clue which has not stopped appearing since it has been confirmed that Breach is coming out and there is a second album to the story. A clue which Tyler showed us just a week or so ago in the most recent music video off of Breach for Drum Show. The clue, or the sign, of two. More than just a trick in a show. More than just a clue that we see reoccurring time and time again. More than just two figures, two versions of Clancy wandering through the wilderness of Trench. It should be obvious what is going on here. That being said, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Comment your own thoughts on this trick from the Clancy Tour, and your thoughts on The Prestige if you have seen it. The countdown to Breach continues tomorrow. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, or any other music commentary and reviews.